I'm excited to have with us a guest, Ramon Valdez. Welcome, Ramon.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, excited to have you here. You've got quite the background. You have been a state representative, state senator for the state of Arizona multiple times. You're currently you're a supervisor, county board supervisor, right? Is that right?
Correct, in Pima County in southern Arizona.
Okay, and you're also you do private lending or trusted investing, however we want to say that.
Yes, we've been doing that for the last year or so.
Okay, great. And you've just completed a project, I understand, but we'll go through that in just a bit. But you've got quite the busy lifestyle, the way it sounds. Would you mind just sharing a little bit of how you got into politics, maybe, and how you then transitioned into the lending side or the trusted investing side, and how that might relate to any of our listeners?
Sure, absolutely. I'm actually a degreed electrical engineer of all things.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was 16, I was a freshman in college, having gone to high school for 3 years. And so I started getting involved in community politics, which led to working for a U.S. senator, working for a U.S. congressman, running campaigns at every level. And then finally in 1996, while I was working for my longtime mentor and predecessor on the Pima County Board of Supervisors, there was an opportunity to run for the state house.
Mm-hmm.
It took a tremendous amount of work. I went down to about 160 pounds, eating 7 times a day. And in the end of it, in September, because it's a primary dominated district, I had the good fortune and was blessed with being the top vote getter in a 5-way primary for 2 seats.
Wow.
Was reelected in 98, was elected in the state senate in 2000 and reelected in 2002. At which point in time I chose to leave the Senate to go work as a senior staff member for the newly elected Governor Napolitano, who was Secretary Napolitano later on in the Obama administration. Subsequently, that September 30th, I was appointed to succeed my mentor and predecessor on the board to the board for the first time on that year. Was elected in 04, re-elected in 08, 12, and just recently last year in 2016 was reelected.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm grandfathered into the original retirement system, which is a defined benefit plan, which basically means I get 80% of what I make today.
Mm.
But my wife and I started talking about 2-3 years ago and said, look, we need to look at other opportunities. So we obviously had 2 rentals already, and we started looking at real estate, and as well as we discovered an opportunity with something called Zeal for Life.
Mm-hmm.
Which I tell people is every superfood on the planet plus fruits and vegetables, and it's an MLM opportunity that we've done fairly well in. And then we went across to Elite Legacy, which is real estate investment training, and discovered private lending.
Yeah, Elite Legacy was Robert Kiyosaki, a spinoff of Robert Kiyosaki. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. He sold his educational component to Elite Legacy.
Sure. Do you know Alex Arriaga?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Alex is my business partner with Kensington Fund. So.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. Super guy. So.
And so we discovered private lending, and frankly, when we were doing some of the real estate investment, we found it really time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm a county supervisor and account executive at Rural Metro and AMR, we have an MLM. Time is at a premium. And found that private lending both provided a really intellectually stimulating as an engineer and problem-solving opportunity, but really an opportunity to start building kind of a more of a nest egg for whenever I choose to retire from public life as well. So that's really kind of how we came to private lending, and it's just been a wonderful opportunity that we look at expanding.
Great. And so you've already done, you said about a year ago, you started on the private lending, and some people call it trusted investing. Some people call it private lending. It depends on where you kind of fall into the equation. When I look at it, I always look at real estate investing as sort of a spectrum. You can go all the way from the active, which is totally active, all the way to passive, which is totally passive. But there's a lot of variation in between those, where you may be semi-active, bringing on a lot of team members that are bringing in other capital and things like that. Or you may be on the passive side, teaming up with other people who have capital. And so you may be a little closer to the center on that active passive scale. And from what I understand, you're right now at this point, you're a little bit more towards center to the right, meaning passive, but you're still somewhat active on the passive side of the equation, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And Tom, thank you. And what we've done in our deal, we were passive investors as we found other investors and put some of our own money in the investment that we're currently getting ready to close. And it's worked out really very, very well. I will tell you that our investor invested about $10,000, as did we. And I sat down with him when I gave him the interest check a couple weeks ago. And he said, the $10,000 that I invested here is making me more money than the $60,000 I have in the bank. Um,
Wow.
so
Wow.
not only is it a great a deal for us as a private data investor or private lenders, but it is a wonderful deal for our investors as well. Right now, we're looking at other different opportunities to become more active investors as well,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's residential or beginning in commercial. We don't know yet.
Okay. Would you mind just taking just a minute and describe the kind of the high level structure of what that first deal looked like, and maybe what you liked about it, what your concerns were, how you mitigated any risks, those types of things. Love to hear what your take on that first deal was.
Sure. Obviously, the first one when you jump off is always the scariest.
No kidding. Right. For sure.
And what I liked about the deal is that it was the loan to value was about 28.7%,
Wow.
which is a wonderful loan to value, obviously,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it was cross collateralized between two properties
Okay.
in Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that it met our underwriting criteria and being a residential. It was single family homes, two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Loved the loan to value. The return was actually great, but that was really the last thing we look at, because obviously we're looking at it from the perspective of a bank. So we've got to do everything we can to mitigate risks.
Absolutely.
So we saw that it also escrowed 6 months of interest up front. We knew who the active investor was personally.
And just on the 6 months up front, that's just so that you know that the monthly cash flow that you and your investors are going to get is assured, because it's put in a third party account, and you know that that will be released on a monthly basis. That way you don't have to worry about whether the borrower is going to come up with that cash. It's already been allocated and built into the structure.
Right, absolutely. And then also, we actually got to see the appraisals, and obviously, we generally go either through a BPO and appraisal of both of the properties, and saw what the after repair value was going to be,
Mm-hmm.
which was also came into the calculation of the loan to value.
And that was done by either you or the third party that brought it, not the developer borrower, right?
Correct. That was
Yeah.
the active investor that brought us the deal.
Mm-hmm.
That did all that work.
Gotcha.
We saw the contract and saw, not first of all, number one, that it was as safe a deal as we could come up with.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, that it was with somebody we trusted, and the borrower himself actually had extensive experience doing this. It wasn't their first, second, or third deal.
All right.
They had a history of knowing what they were doing and having successful deals, and we vetted that as well with the active investor and others, to make sure that when we went to our investor pool and said, "Hey, look, we've got a deal. Here's an opportunity," they understood that it met our underwriting criteria. Which, thinking it's a bank, we
Mm-hmm.
think about the downside and let the upside take care of itself.
Absolutely. So true. So true. So the track record was covered. How about skin? I heard you say that there was cross collateral, which obviously is skin. It's someone's skin, whether that person owned the property or not. Is that how it was structured?
Yeah, it was structured so that their skin in the game was the other performing property as well,
Mm-hmm.
which may accounted for the low loan to value of the loan itself.
Okay.
It was also a first position loan, I forgot to mention as well.
Oh, nice. And about like purchase price and construction costs, what like roughly what were the numbers?
I believe the purchase price was somewhere in the ballpark of 125 to 150,000.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so the loan itself, they have significant skin in the game, both with the cross collateralization and the money they were putting in. So the total loan itself was about 33,000.
Okay.
So as you can
And
tell, it was structured in such a way that the risk was actually as low as we could make it.
right. So $33,000 loan against the whole property.
Right.
Okay. And about how much of that, how much, well, maybe if you could just describe, was the strategy a fix and flip, or was it what was the strategy on the single family home?
It was, I
Or is?
believe it wasn't a fix and flip. It was a fix and hold
Okay.
property. So they will then obviously refinance once it meets the criteria for traditional financing,
I see.
buy us out of the deal.
Yeah, and so that criteria will be met. Will it be because of the cash flow that has been proven that it'll be a rental property that will show history of renting or of income?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the first property was actually completed and is performing at this point at
Okay.
above market
Okay.
rent. And the second one, as we speak, is moving in their renter.
Okay, great. So basically seasoning the income of the property so that the banks are comfortable in lending long term, which that then will be a lot less expensive capital, which makes the property cash flow nicely. But this sort of 6 month interim, maybe even could almost call it a pseudo bridge loan, really helps them get to where they want to go. I'm sure they're super excited because they're now getting into a property that they probably never could have gotten into because the bank wouldn't lend them money without someone like you stepping in and bridging that gap.
Right, and as a matter of fact, that's exactly what I was going to call it. Was a bridge loan in this particular case.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one thing that we always definitely push and encourage is collaboration, working together, everybody pulling together, getting deals done in a way where everybody's pulling in the same direction, going from the abundance mindset rather than scarcity mindset. This helps that person get into the loan. They then are able to get to the bank later on and have the cash flow that they're looking for, the owner of the property will. And so it's a win-win for everybody in this case.
And Tom, that's exactly right. And those are the kind of deals we really look for is everybody wins kind of deals.
Yeah, no kidding. And the other thing I really like about this is the simplicity of it. It seems to be relatively simple. And by that, uh, I think one thing that we always like to look for, and I'm sure you do too, is something with as few moving parts as possible. When we have projects that have major construction or major additions, that type of thing, there are more moving parts, especially if it's a renovation project. With new construction, it might be a little bit less because that's something that can really be systemized and you know exactly what has to go in. With a major renovation, sometimes we're not able to see everything that needs to be done. And so that creates more moving parts, which means that timing can be bumped back and forth a little bit more than we like because certain things may go faster, certain things may go slower, might run into something that isn't seen right up front. So less moving parts, low loan to value, plenty of skin in the game. You know, this one, it certainly seems like it's got all of the makings for a great deal. You've got a good solid exit the way it sounds. Did you have discussions with the borrower about their ability? How did you bridge? How did you cover the let's call it covering the risk of them not being able to qualify for a loan after the 6 month period? Because that would be one area where we'd want to make sure that that person does in fact have the ability to get to that next exit refinance.
Right, and the discussion that we had was with the active investor primarily,
Mm-hmm.
and that there were multiple exit strategies, and at this point, I would need to look at the documentation. I don't remember what the multiple exit strategies is.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that this was the primary exit strategy. There were
Sure.
two additional strategies as well.
Yep. Yep. And I would typically something like this, especially with that sort of loan to value, one exit most likely could have been the sale of the property because at that 28.7% loan to value, it's you definitely have what appears to be a nice solid project. And so in this project, did you bring in someone alongside of you? Did you create sort of a partnership? How did you bring in? And if I understand, it was about $33,000.
Mhm.
Okay.
What we did is actually, I've gone out to a lot of friends in our network and people we know,
Mm-hmm.
presented the idea of deed trust investing and private lending to them and talked to them at length.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, one of the first things we did after we started doing this is we formed an LLC.
Mm-hmm.
So we do the lending through an LLC, and then we put together a packet of information that I can either send electronically or is bound, and we hand over to potential investors. So in this particular case, there was two investors that came in,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously when the deal went out, I sent it through email. They came back, said, "Hey, we want to participate in this. We like the way this looks." We then put together a specialized lending trust.
Mm-hmm.
That both spells out the terms of the deal and then spells out the returns for all parties.
Mm-hmm.
We then that specialized lending trust became a member of the master trust,
Ah, right.
which then secured everybody's interest.
Okay, so and with the trust like that, you've got settlers within the trust, I'm assuming, and the settlers being the investors, the two or three investors that you might have that are brought in. The trust itself is then the lender, and the settlers are members of that trust.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Now, when you go out to the community, we talk about making sure that we're careful with any SEC regulations and securities issues as it relates to raising capital. Have you, one of the things that we always promote, or that is highly recommended, or maybe, I guess it's not, I'm told that there are no laws that this is exactly what it is, that there's no specific written guidelines that you have to have three touches within 30 to 45 days. And I've heard 30 days, I've heard 45 days. But the key is that there is a previous relationship, that there's a relationship before this investment is joined in by the two parties together. So friends and family, from my understanding, pretty safe on those. But it's when let's say we send out a summary to someone we've never met before, or we talk with people like maybe at a meeting, there is that seasoning period, or that period where we get to create that relationship before we accept any capital as investment partners. Anything you'd like to share or add on that?
Sure. I will tell you, as a practice in our business plan, if I don't have a relationship with somebody, I'm not sending them a deal summary.
Yeah.
And what I've told people is, I recently went up to Phoenix to talk to some friends, and obviously with those people we've had year-long relationships, so that's easy. And
Mm-hmm.
if they say, "Hey, you know what? Put me on your deal summary email list," glad to do it. And when I tell them, "Look, if you know people who might be interested, send them my way. Understand that I can't put them on the deal summary list until I get to know them.
Yeah.
I have to get a relationship going with them."
Yeah.
And then once we're ready to put them on the email list, I actually have a investor disclosure statement where they actually sign off,
Perfect.
acknowledging the risk, acknowledging that we have a pre-existing relationship, and I have a short questionnaire for them to fill out that basically tells me what kind of investments they're looking for, so I can match them up as well.
Very nice. Very nice. That's great. It's all about covering ourselves. One thing that we've talked about in the past was building that relationship by way of maybe sending out previously funded deals. So for instance, maybe it could be an investment summary that says, it might have a watermark across it that says funded, or example, or sample. And what I like about that is it gives that person time to start really understanding the details of the deals before they ever have the opportunity to join into any investment. And so that could be another way of getting word out. And what I like about that as well is that it's very non-threatening to the investor. It's not. I mean, they can't even invest if they wanted to. So it's not like you're pushing anything. You're just really laying it out there as information. I also like the idea of occasionally requesting feedback from that person, so that if that person has questions about it, other people probably have questions about it too. So it's a way of making sure that we're hitting all the targets of explaining the risks, explaining how we're mitigating every potential risk in it, and how, whether it's the exit strategies, just so that everything's clear and transparent. So that's great. So that's how you found your investor that joined in alongside of you on that investment, correct?
Well, he's also been practically an uncle. As a matter of fact, I call him Uncle Junior. So I've
Okay.
known him since I was about a teenager.
Okay. Interesting. Uncle Junior. That's good. Good. Everybody would love to have an uncle like that. So.
Yeah, and the packet that I talked about earlier, it has not only a description of the business. I have a Wall Street Journal article that talks about private lending as kind of an industry. Then I also have exactly what you're talking about, sample deals and watermarked with sample on them.
Sweet.
And then the last section is deals that we've offered or updates on deals that we've already closed on.
Okay. And then you're also probably able to include what the track record is, even though we always are very clear to say that what the past track record is no indication of what the future track record will be, just for disclosure's sakes. But it really is important to be transparent on everything. Give the investors plenty to make their decisions on, so that they can actually feel comfortable that they're part of the due diligence process. Not that they're relying 100% on what we give them or what we tell them. I'm sure you do too, encourage people to really dig in and know enough about the project so that they feel very comfortable about what it is.
And I tell them flat out, look, if you want more information, just let me know, email, text me, call me, whatever you want, we'll get it for you.
Yeah, great. So now that you've got the first one under your belt, what do you see as next steps? Or are there any things that are maybe holding you back, or anything specific that would help you get to that next level?
Yeah, about 2 more hours a day.
Gotcha. Well, that'll be a good one if we figure that one out.
Yeah, no, we've gotten a couple of deals, and to be honest, I get deals all the time, and I pass through maybe 20 to 30% of the ones that we are offered.
I'm sure.
Because a lot of times through the vetting process, there's a reason, or sometimes, to be honest with you, it doesn't feel right. The gut, and I learned a long time ago, trust your gut.
Yeah.
My gut says, no way, I'm not passing it through, because obviously I've got to understand what the downside is. I've got to understand the risk before I'm willing to pass that on, because ultimately I'm using my integrity, my relationship, my honesty with my investors, and my experience with my investors to really, hey, this is a deal that I'd like to offer you. Let me know if you're interested.
Yeah.
And so right now the issue I'm bumping up against is, between all my commitments, finding just a little more time to be able to follow up.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Now, when you're looking at a project like that, do you have a checklist that you work off of? We promote checklists all the time on this show, and just it can be such a good way of reducing our risk, because we know that other people have made mistakes. We know that that there are certain things to look for, but the deeper we can go, the more sure that we can be that we're catching every possible risk in a deal, the better off we are. So could you just share a little bit about your process or your checklist?
Yeah, one of the first things we did was we were encouraged to come up with at least a business plan that outlines some of our underwriting criteria, as well as just kind of what we do. And no matter how good you are, you could have that day that you're just a little tired and you miss something. But having a checklist, you actually get to the point, okay, oh, I didn't check that one off. Check.
Yes.
Or, wait, it doesn't meet that one. Oh, I'm glad And so we developed as a checklist, both in terms of borrowers, in terms of investors, in terms of deals that we actually go through.
Mm-hmm.
What I found is that it's an ever-evolving document,
Yes.
because as structures change, as deals change, the more creative ones obviously take a lot more vetting because you have to
Mm-hmm.
figure out the deal structure. Um, and there's an intellectual challenge and enjoyment in that, obviously.
Sure.
But yeah, it's an ever evolving list, and you're absolutely right. You got to have a checklist because you're going to miss something if you don't.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we encourage a lot too, is to have that checklist by your side all the time, so that when we're discussing deals with other people, when we even as simple as hearing about another deal, or reading about another deal, or reading about anything that might trigger that idea that there could be a risk of some sort that someone else had in a project, would that ever relate to the business I'm in? If it would, then it goes on that checklist. It's so much easier to skim over it and be able to check it off. And even if you never use it, and be sure that you have, even if you never use that one particular item, but being able to check it off, the more we can have something there to really be able to dig deep if we need to, the better off we are. So, and learning from other people's mistakes is so much easier than on our own.
And I'll tell you what, one of the things that we also learned, that one of our mentors in the community and in just the business talked
Mm-hmm.
to us about is, look, just because you talk to somebody and they said we're not interested or the risk is too high for us, doesn't mean they're never going to get in. And what we're discovering now is, as they're seeing more and more that we're still in the business and we're still doing deals and we're still
Yeah.
offering deals, all of a sudden they say, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
It must be legitimate.
Yeah.
And they
Totally.
take a second look.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that all builds along with what you said before about the track record and being able to show them deals, show them projects that you've completed, projects that your developers or investors or borrowers have already completed. Which takes me to the next point of the team that it takes to put this all together. Now, we know that there's the developer, there's all the contractors, there's all those people, that it's super critical to get a good solid team and to know that that's part of what's going to get the project done. But there's also the intermediary team. So you use brokers for everything you do. You use attorneys. Could you just describe that?
Sure, absolutely. When we again got into the business, we sat down and again made a checklist of, well, what kind of professionals do we need in this?
Mm-hmm.
So we have an existing broker who's been in the business for over 30 years, who's our broker when it comes to finding when we have borrowers and we need a broker. We have an attorney that's our business attorney who, again, another uncle,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
who helped us set up our LLCs and depending on the deal structure can help us set up multi-member LLCs in equity deals. We have another attorney who is specializes in private lending. We
Mm-hmm.
have a CPA with whom we have discussions in terms of tax implications as well as accounting. We have a bookkeeper that keeps tabs of our inflows and outflows.
Right.
So it's important, especially in what we're now calling the U economy. You do what you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do the things that you're not good at. Get
Yeah.
other people who are good at doing
Absolutely.
those things to do
Absolutely.
those things for you.
Yeah, it frees up so much more of your time to do the things that you're really good at. And so by everybody sticking with what they're best at, that's where the efficiencies come in. That's where the safety measures come in. It really helps hold the project together and keep it on track and keep it more profitable, safer. So um, y- should we talk just a little bit about commercial? I think you had a question earlier about commercial.
Right, and what we're discovering, and as we continue talking to people, both potentially as borrowers or investors, is that we keep being approached because obviously what I do, I have a lot of friends in the development community
Hmm.
who have different types of commercial deals.
Okay.
I have a friend, for example, that is looking for equity investment in a commercial product
Hmm.
that's education related that has a high payback, but obviously we need to mitigate the risk and so we need to look at the risk, and He's located here, but builds. He has his own construction company, and he actually builds these facilities across the country.
Okay.
Have another deal with another friend that's based out of Tucson, but is looking at doing other deals in high return areas.
Mm-hmm.
And he's looking at a residential, multifamily retail space.
Yeah.
And he's looking for substantial investment. And then I've come across people who are looking at deals, that are of substantial size, and they're looking to invest in those kinds of deals.
Mm-hmm.
Or people who have groups of investors who are looking at deals 3-5 million and above.
Mm-hmm.
Where the priorities is capital preservation and growth.
Okay.
So I've got some multiple opportunities. They're both on the investment side and on the deal side, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best way both to learn more about that and
Mm-hmm.
to proceed.
I see. Okay. So if I understand correctly, you've got developers, borrowers, contractors that are bringing you some sweet deals, some good deals that appear to be sweet and good.
Potentially.
Right. And they're commercial, the multifamily, some retail, in particular, one that's educational related. I'm assuming that means it has an education tenant of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And probably with some sort of pre-leasing agreement. Okay. And then you also have investors on the other side who know what you're doing, and they ask you questions about maybe investing alongside of you or working with you.
Right.
And so to pull that together. Okay. Yeah. So my first thought on it is just like you did with this first project you did. And I love the very first one you did, which was single family, simple, low loan to value, very few moving parts. I mean, that's sort of an investor's dream to be able to get those pieces put together. And from our discussions and from what I'm guessing where you're aiming is you're also going to continue doing more single family, kind of maybe the bread and butter type of homes where you can get in, get the deal done 6, 12, 18 months maximum probably, and get it to where the developer sells the property or refinances to a different exit.
Right.
So that's sort of that progression of starting out simple and then going a little bit further as we go. So maybe eventually within a couple of years, you may be at a moderate to heavy rehab or renovation on a single family home, which is a lot more moving parts, but there are ways to mitigate all that and feel comfortable with that. My first take on what you are asking about the commercial is to find one or possibly two different deals / strategies that feel the most comfortable based on what your background is, your experience, your team, all of that. And let's just say that it was the educational tenant or the building that would have the educational aspect to it. Because just looking at that, just from the very little you just said right now, it sounds like it does have the cash flow that would be required in order to make it happen. Otherwise the numbers wouldn't work out. It wouldn't pass your lending criteria. Mm-hmm. If it has that, then it more than likely has the ability to get longer takeout financing. So that combination right there to me is something that triggered, oh, that sounds interesting because you've not only got the potential for cash flow relatively quickly, but then with that cash flow, you also have a really good chance of getting the exit and the refinancing.
Right.
If the refinancing is also very readily available, then your third exit is also very easy, and that should be very easy, and that would be to sell the property. If it's very financeable, then to sell it, if that would be an optional exit strategy. So those are three things that I think really are pretty interesting about that. It also tells me that there aren't a whole lot of different, unless it's like, for instance, let's take the other one, the residential and retail. It's somewhat the same, but my first take on retail is it's really good when you can get it rented up, leased up, everything's running smooth. It's wonderful because it's low maintenance, low effort, but sometimes commercial space, in my experience, can be harder to get leased up, may take longer, might be a little bit more of a challenge. And your you're incorporating two different strategies. One is residential. It isn't a huge difference, but it's a little bit of a difference. And I'm thinking that maybe what you were talking about in that case might be a building where there's residential above and commercial on the main floor.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. And so that combination works really well. So if that fits into your criteria, then that would be just fine too. But it is really two different strategies. It's commercial space and it's residential space. From there, I think the other piece I would look at is the size of the project. So if, for instance, the educational piece is a lot bigger than you're used to, but the residential and retail space is a small, comfortable place where you're very, very familiar with the area, then that might move that one up front, the retail and residential, because the other one is maybe bigger than what you're used to or comfortable with. So it's those types of things that I would look at first, and then just do it gradually, just like what we do with our developers or borrowers. We may find a developer that is really good and they appear to be, they have a track record, they have everything going for them, a lot of good projects that they've completed. We still won't jump in completely with multiple projects immediately. We'll do it gradually. We'll start with one. As we see that one is moving along, progressing well, we know that we can work. Communication is good. Then we'll start building that next one, and then the next one after that, and that's really how we like to be able to get going and get started. So we don't jump all the way in right away with the biggest and heaviest project out there. So that would be probably the first suggestion, would be to go to that point. The other piece is when you're talking with your investors, the people who might be investing, your Uncle Junior or anybody else that you know of, friends and family, people that you have relationships with, to get a feel for what it is that they're comfortable with. And if you get some sort of a reading or a indication that a couple of the investors really like one way versus a different way, that'd be another reason to steer towards that. But I don't think I would jump into 3 or 4 different strategies all at one time. I would try and work my way up to each of those strategies so that because it takes a little bit more to build a team for each new type of strategy that you do. For instance, the house you're doing right now, that one probably took a pretty small team. Whereas let's say it's a heavy renovation or moderate to heavy renovation, that one's going to take a bigger team. So it takes a little bit more time to build that team. With these projects in commercial, it's going to take some time to get that team built and get all the details worked out in that. So, trying to think if there's anything else. Does that help answer?
Actually, I've got a page full of notes already.
Oh, good. Yeah. Let's see. Anything else that you would like to chat about? I'm trying to think if we had any other.
I would tell you that if someone's out there and they're looking to become an investor, whether it be passive or active, I think the hardest part really is to get past that first person you talk to about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is that once you that's going to be one of your biggest threshold moments, simply because it's something new, it's something out of our comfort zone. But the truth is that we as people don't grow until we get out of our comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So once you do it that first time, that second time's not so hard. That third time's even less harder. So It does get easier. The trick is to stick with it.
Great. Oh, that's a great point. And if we approach it from the perspective of, this is what we have, we're very comfortable, very confident in what we have, and we're offering it as a solution for the other person. It reminds me of my efforts. I joined Toastmasters recently, and with that, it's a bit of a struggle for me to get up in front of a big group and feel comfortable speaking. But if I can get it to the point where I'm thinking from the perspective of, why am I up here speaking in front of this audience? It's because I'm there to give. So it's about the audience. It really isn't about me. It's not about me being self-conscious and afraid everybody's going to judge me. It's about the audience and what am I able to give them. When I can get to that mindset where I can share with them from my heart what it is that I really want to share, what I want to give, it just changes the dynamics of everything. And I would say that it's very similar when we're talking with investors, whether it's friends, whether it's relatives, whether it's people that we've done business with in other areas. If we project it from the perspective of this is something that I'm doing, and if they're interested in coming alongside, that'd be cool. If not, that's fine too. But it lays it out there as an opportunity, not as something that we're asking for, not as something that we have to be self-conscious about feeling like we're overstepping our bounds. And so and the other piece on that is that I always like to use the analogy of when we're talking, let's say I'm approaching you, you're an investor, a passive investor, that you may have money you want to invest. If I share with you that this is what I'm doing and I'm asking you if you're interested in joining me, and there's a fine line between going down the path of you feeling like you're needed, me feeling like I'm asking, kind of gets into that little bit of an awkward situation. Like, am I being pitched, you might think, or am I like, where is this coming from? But if we approach it from, and that's what I call toe to toe or belly to belly, the other way is to do it shoulder to shoulder. And that is, if I'm working on a project, I'm totally comfortable with it. I'm putting my money into it. I'm doing this project, I'm funding this project. And then I look to the side and I say, this is what I'm doing. If you're interested, feel free to join me. And we go shoulder to shoulder and we get the job done. We go forward. That way it keeps it from that kind of toe to toe. It could be an awkward balancing act at some point, but the shoulder to shoulder piece, it means you're confident in what you're doing. You're going to be doing this project. You're moving forward with it. If somebody is interested in joining alongside of you, great. If not, that's totally fine too, because you're moving forward. You're doing it. There are going to be plenty of people out there who are interested in that type of thing, especially like you, as you're building your track record, your history, your reputation. You've already got an amazing reputation being the state senator, state representative, the county board of advisors now. All of the things that you're doing, you've got such a good underlying trust that you've built, and to be able to use that, and I mean it's a big responsibility, but you've created something that's really powerful. And so I guess that's just something that I think could be very beneficial as well. So.
Well, one of the things one of the books that I read was by Stephen M. Covey, and it was The Speed of Trust.
Oh, I love that book. Yes.
And it really, it forces you to think of it differently, but it's very true. I mean, at the speed of trust, business can be done much, much quicker, much more efficiently, and at a lower cost.
Yeah, totally. And I've used this analogy before, the idea that you get a bucket and it takes a drop. You build a trust, a drop at a time. Drop and a drop and a drop more and a drop more. Eventually you get the bucket full or close to full. And you got to be careful, because if you stumble and you kick it over, you're going to have to start over again. So being really careful. I mean, we don't want to bump that bucket. We don't want to cause anything that creates any sort of a challenge for the trust aspects. And so using that as a sort of a metaphor, it helps us understand why trust is so valuable. And it does take time. It takes efforts. I mean, you've been at it for years and years with your background and your track record. So,
well, decades and decades at this point.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Cool. Well, this has been really great. I really appreciate you taking the time. If any of the listeners are interested in getting a hold of you, how would they reach out to you?
They can reach me either by email, which is V as in Victor, V as in Victor again, LENDING, VLV Lending, in other words, at cox.net. I also have a cell phone, which is 520-260-5882.
Okay, great. Well, this has been a huge pleasure. I really appreciate you sharing all of your experience, your knowledge, everything with us. And thank you very much, Ramon.
Thank you, Tom. It's been my pleasure.
Great.